You're listening to Stretch Unscripted.
The podcast where we stretch your mind,
Flex your curiosity,
and keep it completely unscripted.
We'd like to thank our sponsors, Intelligent Community Initiative, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, and Catalyst Co-working.
Welcome to Stretch Unscripted. I'm your host, Roger Kollock. I'd like to first start by thanking our sponsors, Blue Cross, Blue Shield of Oklahoma, Intelligent Community Initiatives for helping sponsor this program. Also would like to thank Catalyst Co-working for graciously allowing us to host our podcast here. If you're ever around 15th and Lewis, please stop by Catalyst Co-working. Also stop by the coffee shop that they have downstairs, Bryce. Now, so fortunate to have our guest for today, Dr. Chris McNeil. He is a physician at Utica Park Clinic. We're going to jump into that a little bit as well. Let him kind of talk a little bit about his kind of day-to-day emergency med, correct?
Yes.
And we're also going to get you to touch on some of the things that you kind of do in the community, and specifically kind of focusing on youth medical mentorship, organization that you founded. And so, good. Thank you for joining us. How's things going?
It's going. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, I just got off shift out in Owasso this morning, so this is the best part of waking up.
Best part of waking up. It sounds like a commercial, old school coffee commercial. That's part of waking up, Folgers in your cup.
That's it.
Right?
That's it.
So that's funny. So I got one for you. We'll do this kind of like rapid fire. I just want to know, and we'll start with a coffee question.
Okay.
So on shift, coffee, no coffee?
Absolutely coffee.
Gotta go coffee, okay. What's your go-to snack on shift?
On shift, you know, I love the Belvita. Something about the marketing says it's like you get extra 2 or 3 hours. So I'm like, man, anything that'll keep me running, but it's also easy to snack on. 1 box, 4 bars. So I'm like, that's a win. You know, you get a Pop-Tart, you only get 2.
But that's true.
Belvita, you get 4. So I'm all about being economic.
Okay, all right. So what's your favorite music genre to listen to on shift?
You know, I'll have to go with Motown, right? I like to think of the duck analogy, right? On top, smooth sailing, everything looks real under control. But underneath the water, like we working, we're putting in that work. So Motown gives me kind of that sense of home. And I think I can bring that into the patient's room as well. If I come in calm and smooth sailing, kind of like you are today, you know, it slides and roll from room to room.
So I got last question for you. Your last question. I think everybody wants to know this. So, you know, normally how it works, they usually have a little calf down there for y'all to kind of get a little something to eat. But, you know, that gets old after a while. What is your go-to restaurant to DoorDash, bro?
Oh, it's DoorDash?
When you're on shift.
Well, since I work in about 8 different places, kind of varies from site to site. I would say, you know, Subway is always clutch.
Okay.
You know, do I want to go the meatball marinara today, or is it a steak day? But I'd say the consistency from place to place makes that just always a delight.
Cool. So we've known each other for quite some time. I mean, it's probably going on, what, 9 to 10 years?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I kind of remember I was sitting trying to think earlier. I was like, well, man, when did we first meet? And I kept thinking it was, you know, at TU when we used to be in the, you know, the downtown Boulder building. And I remember, you know, you were doing things with the Schweitzer Fellowship. And I was like, I remember seeing you there, but I'm like, no, that's not where we met. We met through, I guess this, you know, we both do a lot of stuff with the functional movement screen, and I guess they were looking for individuals who could administer the test to this company out. I don't even know where it was at. Maybe it was in the school years.
Yeah.
And we met, I guess, at Target because we were going to carpool together. We didn't even know each other at the time. And so we kind of kicked it for that day, did them assessments. And I was like, well, that dude was cool. That'll be the last time I see you.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, it's like, well, I don't know, a month or something later, maybe 2 months. I'm walking in the building and I'm like, hold on. I know you. And so I guess that's where we got our start. I don't know.
Well, TU made it easy because you were already famous, right? So I could look you up. You could look me up, yeah. But so I was starstruck, and I think it was just super cool to see you in your own right, being able to take what you do in the community, take what you do in research, and then take it out and actually change the bottom line for companies. So I was starstruck that day.
So let's jump into things just a little bit, because I think our listeners want to know kind of how did you first, know that you wanted to be a physician? When did that start? Did you always know that? Like when you're young, just like, hey, growing up, I'm going to be a doctor. You know, how'd that happen for you?
Yeah, no, I think this is a really powerful story because at some point in time, you look around the room, especially when you get further up in your studies, and you're like, man, everybody has that kind of aha moment or that Excalibur, right? Where you pull the sword out the stone and just know, man, this is it, it's destiny. And I don't feel like I ever did. It was to me a constant sense of assurance and affirmation that science is everywhere, and science is my friend, and science is something that I can see myself doing. Um, I had a cousin, actually kind of the same similar situation. He was interviewing for a charter school, and we didn't talk about this till we were much older. He's a pharmacist now, and he got interviewed. I was like, why should we let you in the school? He's a young guy, he's like maybe 12, 13 years old. And he said, all I see is math. Like math is everywhere, right? And I think of the same way, what I was put into was an infrastructure in the system where I can take education and I can go anywhere. And whether it be my parents, whether it was teachers, whether it was coaches, I was always put back into a position where science and health and being able to utilize some of those aspects were a pathway for me. And so what I think now back looking is, it's a blueprint, right? It's something that's scalable. It's something that's reproducible. And even though I didn't have that Excalibur moment, I always knew that I had a true north, and that north, whether it be medicine or anything else, it just leads to success because of the environment says you're going to do something. It was actually the community that started calling me doc, right? And, when my friends started saying it, my dad was a physician's assistant, but he always had a white coat on. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be like him. And that's a privilege for me, to see that and have that in my life. But then when you start embodying it, I didn't wear a white coat to school. People just started saying it. So I was like, well, I guess that's my next best step. And that's what I'll do. And once it comes out of your mouth and you say it, word is bond. Now you got to follow it up. And my community has held me accountable. And I think it changed a lot of the trajectory of where I could go versus where I'm at right now.
Okay. So kind of growing up, what were some of the like extracurricular activities you were involved in yourself that really helped kind of mold you? So I want, anything from, I don't know, whatever you were involved in, it could be band, it could be sports, whatever it is. Like, what are some of those things that you can look back on and say, you know what, that prepared me for the rigors of moving into medical school and then for the rigors that I experienced professionally?
Yeah. I'd be lying if I said what I was doing then was to prepare me for where I'm at now. Cause very much so it was for a selfish gain at that time, So I played in the orchestra growing up.
Okay.
And I was the biggest dude, biggest and blackest dude in the orchestra. So one of the things that came about was I remember watching Tom and Jerry, right? And Tom and Jerry, there was an episode, it was like, is you is or is you ain't my baby.
Oh, I know that one.
Right. That's iconic.
You ain't my
Right.
no.
So maybe that's where the Motown kind of comes in. It's kind of my comfort zone. But in that case, you had Tom, the cat, with the cello. Now, growing up in my community and my family, we didn't know the difference between a cello, a viola, and a violin. I'm thinking like, yeah, I want that one. The cello's big. I'm a big guy. I had to grow into my head as a little guy. So I figured I wanted a big instrument. So the cello is what I came in for, but I didn't know the name of it. Started up getting the viola. And that's what I ended up playing essentially all through high school. And the policy of the family was once you start something, you got to finish. So, I got into something because I liked it. And because I was trying to be in a jazz band. And I ended up having to stay in it because that was the rule in the home. What would go on to become is, that love for music and kind of understanding how things work introduced you to a lot of different people. And I remember going into wrestling practice with a violin or a viola, and people like, well, what's that? Are you gonna like play us a song? It's like, well, first I'm gonna dump you on your head, and then we can talk about the song. So it just became kind of an iconic. People knew when I was coming and going just because of what I was associated with, but I was kind of that Swiss Army knife that fit into every type of situation, mostly because you start something because you like it and you finish it because that's a policy that your family and your community says you got to do. So I'd say the thing that maybe defined this aspect now more than ever was wrestling, and having to go through somebody trying to impose their will on you, to you having to make a decision of what I'm going to do in this situation and how I'm going to carry myself and the decisions I got to make to be prepared. And I think after doing things like that, it's made medicine probably one of the easiest things that I do. And not to say that medicine's easy, but just to say that that constant sense of chaos is where I grew up, and that trial by fire. So being in that situation, I feel very comfortable being uncomfortable.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about, let's touch on that a little bit. Let's talk about wrestling just a little bit. So you did wrestling in high school. Did you go next level up, college? Tell me about that.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
tell me about that. Because I think there's kids that want to know, like, hey, can I like still do some of these other things that I'm really, really passionate in and still be able to pursue a career path, in healthcare? Or is it like you got to do one or you got to do the other?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
I would say, getting a scholarship in wrestling and doing the sport, that's not why I got into it initially. I was playing football, and my football coach was a wrestling coach. So my 7th grade football coach was the head wrestling coach. And I thought I was going to go play basketball, to be honest. I remember him saying like, hey, I want you to go watch this on TV. And it was Rulon Gardner versus Alexander Karelin. Right now, Alexander Karelin at this time hadn't been beaten in like 8-10 years. And now he's like some type of politician in Russia. But what was really powerful is like, this is the moment in time where the American beat the Russians. So it's like Rocky, right?
It's like Rocky.
Yeah. Right. And he was known for this move called the reverse lift, where he would pick up a grown man who didn't want to be picked up and drop him on his head. So it's kind of like iconic that my coach knew, is like, hey man, this is an opportunity for me to really make this pitch to you. And in my opinion, like, this was the basis of recruitment, right? Why is the head wrestling coach the 7th grade football coach? Like, he knew exactly what he was doing. And what that provided was a really easy pitch for him to say, you want to get better at football next year? We lost every game. He said, you want to be better next year? You need to come wrestle. Basketball ain't going to do it. So I traveled with this guy all over the United States, Ellis Holt. He became an extraordinary mentor, like a second father to me. And I hated losing. I hated being in tights even more. Wrestling was something, and when we did it in Lawton, you'd actually have a pep rally. So the entire school's there, and they watch you wrestle. So as a 7th grader coming up again, beat up by a 9th grader, and you remember that, right? But it also makes you tough. And so in those essence, I think what's really powerful again is you'll never have a situation like that and not remember how it feels. And the lesson there was, be prepared, because it's coming. And time's coming, hard time's coming. And if you're ready to take that head on, you'll be set. And so you get beat up, and then lo and behold, you forget essentially kind of who's in the stands. And it goes from mom and dad and your geography teacher to 2-time Olympic champion, 9-time world champion John Smith, who's watching you since you were a freshman in high school. And he knows your story. He knows your story better than you do. And so when that time comes to say, hey, I like the way that you're moving, that you carry yourself. The fact that you want to be a doctor, like, that's cool too, but I'm not recruiting you to be a doctor. I'm recruiting you to win championships. And so now you have this opportunity that you didn't plan to do. You just did because this is the guide. Your guide is to not quit, to work hard, and to, put your best out on there every time you step on the mat or whatever it is that you're going to do. And that paid off. And, for a message for a kid is, you got to move in every essence like the world is watching you. And if you do that and you're proud of what you put your stamp on, like no matter what situation comes, I don't think you'll ever be out of opportunities. And that's essentially what happened to me. It started out as something, the intentionality was to simply go out there and do your best. And doing your best every time comes now into money, dollars, cents, and opportunities to train with Olympians and the best guys in the world at this.
Nice, nice. So I do want to switch gears just a little bit. Because I do want to talk just a little bit about some of the things that you're doing in the community. Because it's been very impactful. And I think the best place for us to start is for you to start by telling us a little bit about Youth Medical Mentorship and why you decided to start that organization.
Yeah. You know, I'd be lying if I said you didn't have a role in this too, right? Youth Medical Mentorship, and even from the name itself, is built off of a story of a homegrown healthcare professional. And homegrown meaning these are the people that have impacted me throughout my life that have essentially set up, in my opinion, a blueprint, a guide. And I think in that case, you have to define what a mentor is versus an advisor versus a counselor versus a role model. So it all really picked up off of learning that I was a statistic. And I've heard statistics my entire life, but I don't think I was ever smart enough to understand the odds, right? And so being able to hear that, by the age of 25, I got a high chance of either being in jail or being in trouble in some type of way. That was never told to me until I was 25, right? So that was never my reality. In fact, it was one of my coworkers that I was celebrating my birthday. And so being able to see that for a Black man, that was a really powerful and impactful moment in my life. I was like, man, ignorance was bliss. And so those statistics started to evolve in medicine. And the statistic at this time was more Black males applied in 1978 to medical school than in 2014. I'm like, the world's getting smarter. We get more information and access to information. Why are we going away from one of the most prestigious jobs in the world? And there's a lot of factors that led into that. But in my reality, we're talking 2014. Well, the first time I applied to medical school was 2012. So when everyone in the room was talking about, man, did you see the unicorn? Did you see the unicorn? And you look up and you touch the top of your head. You got a horn. You look back, you got some sparkles, like the unicorn, right? And then so you start to think a little bit differently. And what I saw was the collection of my footsteps that could potentially be a door and a pathway for other people. But all those footsteps were because I was looking for a lighthouse, right? And that lighthouse was people like you. It was a mentor at each critical stage of my life that it wasn't necessarily something where I could always come up to you and ask you questions or what would you do in this situation. But I knew at any point in time, if I called Dr. Kollock, I know he's grinding, right? I know he's pouring north. And for me, it was the same way for my coaches. I don't need to know what you're doing right now. I don't need necessarily help in this particular situation. So if you think about an advisor has a very specific amount of advice for a very peculiar situation. The guy that we met downstairs, right? He's giving financial advice. He's not giving marriage advice, right? So I'm not going to come to him with a problem that I have up here and then expecting that he's going to solve that. A counselor, no one comes to a counselor before a problem happens, right? You come when you have a problem. So being able to separate those two, I wouldn't expect that these two individuals are going to have exactly what I need to build this blueprint. They're important, but in this time frame, I have to figure out what are the steps that I make before the problem starts, and what do I do when there is no guidance, when I don't even realize there is a problem. And so now you got a mentor and a role model. I think a role model is really easy for us to see guys like Alexander Karelin and thinking like, well, I'm not Russia. I'm not 7'5", and I'm not undefeated for the past 8 years. So even though it would be cool to be in the Olympics, I can never be this guy. My daughter loves Taylor Swift, right? She's never going to be Taylor Swift, but there's a lot of things that she can't embody. And that's where I think the mentor is different. The mentor allows you to see what your direction is at all times, even if I'm never actually the mentor itself. And so to you, I give that credit as a critical part of my life. And YMM was built around how can I center these mentors as lighthouses for students who have aspirations, ambitions, or potential just like mine.
That's nice. So you've got a lot of things going on. Obviously, people say that, just being a physician is taxing enough, much less pursuing this other endeavor that I know is a very big production, and there's a lot of moving pieces, and everything from managing individuals, making those community connections, building the partnerships, the collaborations, pursuing funding, all of those things that go into that. How do you find time for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of gave me some anxiety there just thinking about it, right? It's like all the things that I have to do, but that I go back to this, like emergency medicine, I feel like is very simple compared to everything that you just stated, right? Because in emergency medicine, there's one door in, there's one door out, right? And my mentor has always specified to me ABC every time, always be closing. So every time I come into a room, it's like either we're going to Jesus, we're going upstairs, or we're going home. Okay. And so you always have that destination in mind for that patient, and in respect to what they want as well. So no matter what type of chaos comes in, you've been trained for it, you've seen it, you know what it looks like. Business doesn't look like that. You know what I mean? Like being able to run a nonprofit and put food on people's tables, help people buy their first home, help a student realize a dream that they didn't realize that they had, or they definitely weren't working to meet that dream. There's a lot of unknown variables in that. And I think in that regard, what's powerful is that all the answers are embedded in the community. And so the challenge itself is I have to understand that 10% of health outcomes for what I do with the patient in the ER is going to account for their life, right? What I do in the emergency department accounts for 10% of their outcomes, all right? And so in Oklahoma, we're 49th in health outcomes. So if I do it like everybody else is doing it, I'm going to get 10% of the results. And for my patients and what the work that I put in, I'm like, that's not enough, right? So if I can go beyond the walls of the emergency department and I can find ways to facilitate the stories, the people, the ideas, the resources that allow me to get more than that 10%, we got a game changer. And I just needed to write it down and put it on a napkin. And then I need to see one win. And just like wrestling, get beat up, you get beat up, you get beat up, you get one win. And now you start finding some additional wins. You start finding some people, you start finding some momentum. And it just becomes a flame and a fire that really sparks other people. So the success of YMM was built on the students and the stories. And as soon as I see those students and stories, it reminds me I'm doing the right thing. Just like when you treat a patient and you see them get better. So, as long as I continue to see that North Star, it justifies everything that you just said, right? Why it's hard. You find time. You find time to make a win because the patients are worth it. Our city's worth it. And I can't bring my kids into the ER. No, if we do, if it's a bad day for everybody. But I can bring them to YMM.
Yeah. So I got a question. And so if you had like no limits, is there any type of initiative that you would start in the city, or is there some direction maybe you would, move YMM and use medical mentorship in?
Yeah.
What would it be if you had no limits? If getting the personnel, the staffing, the funding, that was all removed, what would it be?
Yeah. To me, that's easy. I'd have a roster. I'd have a roster for every school, for every student that has come out of that school. We want to fix education. You look at two parameters, like what's our weakest link, what's our strongest link. If I have the strongest link, which is my alumni and what they've gone to do, what aspects can I take as a mentor and apply that to the weakest link? that is going to give them equity, is going to give them empowerment, is going to give them the resources that they need. And what we have in Oklahoma is a girth of success that has not been measured, kind of like that statistic. Like we have unicorns that are running loose that we've never actually documented where they come from, what developed them, what teachers led to their inspiration. And when we don't do that, they leave. And so now that becomes very difficult to track. So if you were to look at the 517 public schools across the state of Oklahoma, and you were to just have a roster of who left that school and what they're doing now and where they found success and where they didn't, it's really just keeping up with our alumni. You would have an excellent metric to get into healthcare and think about, where do our doctors come from? Where have our homegrown healthcare professionals made in Oklahoma, and how, and what's in that DNA? Now we do this for multiple other professions, right? Everybody wants to be like Mike. So we've studied Michael Jordan. We know where he's from. We got Space Jam. We have all these components to know this is what he did at each stage in order to be successful. So we apply that to business. We apply that to sports. We apply that to across the spectrum, to cars, right? But we don't do that for our healthcare professionals. And we're not looking to see, how do we build the best nurse in Oklahoma that's poised to take care of all these complex decisions and problems. We don't do that for our teachers. Like, where do our teachers come from, and how do we build that homegrown health professional workforce? So that is what I would provide. I would provide that roster, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you see where our superstars are coming from, and you are like, man, that's like a 30 for 30. Like, you see, this dynasty of talent coming out, and then it just stops, and like, what happened? Right. And that's I think, in my opinion, that would draw a lot of our decisions, the policies, exactly where they should be. And that's in the neighborhoods and the communities.
So what's one thing, if you could share one piece of advice, one, particular pearl of, wisdom, what would it be?
Biggest piece of wisdom that I have is to come to our health professional draft and see the power of what a mentor can do in your life. It's going to be on March 26th from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. And we're going to tell the stories of how we build homegrown health professionals in Oklahoma, one neighborhood at a time. We need you there.
Dr. Chris McNeil. Until next time, stay stretched, stay curious, keep it fun.
Don't forget to give us a like and follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel to see more episodes of our podcast.